Well, now that we are officially uh, unmessed up, welcome to Frontline Manor on the Rise. I am your host, Kevin Stewart, Mr. Do Right, if you did not know. And today we have our Manor historian in the house once again for First Monday, Wayne Schneider. How you
Yes,
doing, sir?
I'm doing great so
All
far.
right. So far, we're gonna do this by hook or crook.
I hope so.
Oh yeah, it's going down for sure. All right, he's got us some new information for us tonight. We're gonna just jump right on into it because I have no idea what he has in store. So when you hear it, I hear it too.
That's right. You and 99% of the other people in Manor don't have any idea because most of them have never heard this before.
Okay. Oh,
This is
okay.
this is something
Hot off the presses.
exactly until 3 months ago I didn't know most of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this
Okay.
is you're getting an exclusive tonight.
All right. Well, I think I get an exclusive from you anyway.
from, other than me and one other person I'll be talking about, you're probably the only other person who's ever heard this story.
Oh wow,
So
that is exclusive.
so
Okay.
it's something that's just been discovered. So,
Okay.
but it has to do with Manor history. It has to do with something that's going on right now and probably will still be going on in the future.
Okay.
So,
Oh, this
so
is
it's going to
exciting.
cover a long time.
Okay.
All right. 3 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
I got an email from the chairman of the Travis County Historical Commission, and he sent the same email to me and to one other person. And what he was doing was introducing the two of us because he said in the email that she was looking into buying a house here in Manor, and she was trying to find some of the records of the people who had owned the property before she did.
I remember you was telling me about this last time.
Right.
Okay.
Throughout this whole thing, I'm not going to reveal who that person is or the address of the house,
Okay.
just for privacy reasons right now. All that will probably come out sometime in the future, but for right now, I won't be mentioning that.
Okay.
Um, anyway, I sent her an email and we got in touch with each other. And she said that that's what she was doing. She was looking into buying what in one place was described as a historic home in the old part of Manor.
Okay.
And she said she had already found deed records for the property going back to 1996, but she hadn't been able to find anything after that. She wanted to find as many of the previous owners of the property as she could come up with to find out just the history of the place,
Mm-hmm.
because she had not closed the deal yet. She was just looking into it at that point. So anyway, um, real estate listings that she had found already from the Travis County Appraisal District showed that the house was built in 1930. But from the information that she had and from knowledge that she has, she works in an area where she would have knowledge of this kind of thing. And from knowledge that she had, she said it appeared to her that parts of the house had been built somewhere between 1870 and 1910.
Okay.
So some of it was older than what's showing on the Travis County Appraisal District website. And the records that she saw seemed to indicate that a porch had been closed in to make a bathroom in the house, and that would have been in 1930. So that means if that was done in 1930, the house was older than that.
Okay.
So, which gave her something else to believe that. So she also found records from 1997 showing that the house had been sold by the estate of Frankie Gage Hennig in 1997 for $45,000. I don't know if you remember or not, but on our last meeting, we had a hand-drawn map of the city of Manor,
Yeah.
was drawn by Frankie Gage Hennig.
Okay.
So that's the same person. So I knew a little bit about that person, and just from the map, but there were a lot of other things that I didn't know about them that are just a minor part of the story, but they will play in a couple of places. So I told her I'd start taking a look, see what I could find,
Mm-hmm.
because she was looking for every owner, previous owner of the house that she could possibly find records for. So I started looking, and the first thing I decided to look at was Frankie Gage Hennig, of course, because she'd already given me that information. So I started looking at that and found that Travis County rural directories for 1954, 55, 56, 57, they're online. And it showed that Frankie and her husband, who was named Oscar Hennig, were living in Manor at that time. And that this at least from 1954 on, but I didn't find any directories for Manor older than that. But it showed that her that she was living in Manor at that time, but it showed at a different address from the house where this house is located that we're talking about tonight. And other information had showed that Frankie was a graduate from Manor High School in 1925.
Okay.
So that's pretty much all that I decided to look at as far as she was concerned at that moment. Now, let's, what do we know about Manor? We know that the town was founded in 1872.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back that far. And that a man named Theodore Koss, it's spelled Kosse, so I guess it's Koss, but that he was an engineer for the Houston and Texas Central Railroad. And when James Manor donated the land for the town, that Theodore Koss divided, platted out the town into 80 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And those blocks, of course, are divided into lots. And there are some lots that have as many as, some blocks that have as many as 5 lots on them, and some blocks that have as many as 20 lots on them, just depending on where it's located and what part of the town it was in. But uh, we know that that's the way it was laid out, and we know that half of the blocks, when it was deeded after the town was completely laid out, half of the blocks were deeded out to James Manor.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them were deeded out to the Houston and Texas Central Railroad. So each one of them owned half of them. So the house that she was looking into buying was located on 2 lots in one of these particular blocks. And as I said, we're not going to give the exact location or the exact address, but not, not,
No, keep going. It's still
not, not going to give the exact location as far as the street address or which block and lots they are,
mm-hmm.
because that'll come out all later. Anyway, I decided to start searching the deed records that are online and to see what I could come up with. And there are deed records online that go all the way from about 1840 up to about 1949 in some places. So I started looking, and I'm going to go slowly through this list here to tell you what I found, because there's certain names in here that we'll come back to look at later on,
Okay.
but it tells when they got involved in this. So I started looking, and what I found out was, of course, I said James Manor owns half of the town at the time in 1872. All right, so he began selling lots immediately. Almost there, you can find records where he sold lots in Manor just a month or two after the town was formed. He began to advertise them for sale in the newspaper, and he sold them, started selling them. But on February 11th, 1884, so this is 12 years after the city of Manor is, town of Manor is formed, a woman named Lucinda Carthen. It's Carthen.
Okay.
A woman named Lucinda Carthen bought 1 lot in Manor from Thomas Benton Wheeler. And Thomas Benton Wheeler was married to one of James Manor's daughters.
Okay.
He married James Manor's daughter, Catherine, who went by the name of Kitty, but she had died the same year that James Manor did, which was 1881. So Thomas Benton Wheeler was selling off a number of pieces of property that the two of them had owned, and Lucinda Carthen bought one lot in Manor in 1884, paid $25 for it.
Hmm.
And that was the going rate at that time. There were a lot of them that in the area where she bought this one that were selling for $25. November 21st, 1889, this is 5 years later, the Houston and Texas Central Railroad sold the lot next to the one that Lucinda Carthen had bought, sold it to Eliza Carthen for $25. Then, January 1893, a man named T.H. Barrow purchased another lot from the Houston and Texas Central Railroad, and he paid $55 for this one. And then in 1893, also October 1893, he and his wife sold that same lot to a man named James Harris for $125, or for $85 on that one. But then James Harris and his wife Annie sold this same lot to a man named John Rainey, and he paid $125 for the lot. Well, all right, here's where we get back to it. December 19th, 1896, John Rainey sold that same lot to Alan Carthen. So we've got Lucinda Carthen, we've got Eliza Carthen, and we've got Alan Carthen, all buying lots. And as it turned out, they're right next to each other.
Okay.
And 4 years later, and here's a name you'll remember from last time, William Ludecky.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, in January 23rd, 1899, Alan Carthen took out a mechanic's lien from William Ludecky to construct an 18 by 36 foot house on the lot that he had bought from John Rainey.
Okay.
And Alice, this is then we go up to the next deed record. So they are on the two lots where the house is being built, and Lucinda Carthen owns the third lot, which is next to theirs. And so Alan and Eliza, then in 1901, they sold both lots, and it must have been with the house on them, because they sold them for $405.
Wow.
And they sold them to William Ludecky. He paid them $200 for the property, and he canceled the remaining part of the mechanic's lien. It was $205. He canceled that. So in effect, he was paying $405.
Mhm.
So the lot that had been purchased earlier for $25 or $50, he's now paying over $400. So it must have the 18 by 36 foot house on it.
Right.
So that's 1901.
Yeah.
3 days later,
Okay.
Lucinda Carthen sells the lot that she has next door to William Ludecky, and he pays her $140 for her lot. So as of 1901, Alan and Eliza and Lucinda have all sold their property already. William Ludecky wrote out his will in 1915,
Mm-hmm.
and leaving all of his property to his wife Emma. And when he died in 1932, he still owned those lots, but he also owned lots. Well, let's say William Ludecky bought and sold a lot of property in Manor.
Okay.
Let me see if I think I've got this list in here.
Oh, while you look for that, $400 in 1901 is worth $15,767 today.
Okay.
Yeah. So he
So-
still got that property for a steal.
Yeah. When I got to looking at William Ludecky and the amount of property he was buying and selling in Manor, I just quickly made up a list of,
Oh, wow.
of some of the stuff that this is only from 1880 to 1892, and this is some of the stuff he was buying and selling. All of these,
He was
and
flipping properties way back then.
all of this is lots that he bought from one of James Manor's daughters. It's this part plus this part he bought from her. She had a lot of extra lots that she had inherited from her father.
Just that one section looked like you have over 10 lots.
Oh, way more than that. Yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, I just
Wow.
and once I got up to 1892, I quit. I said
Wow.
that's enough. I'm not going to look any further. but he bought and sold a lot of property in Manor.
And he's the one that owned the hardware.
He owned the hardware store, and
Right.
I've uh, did a little more research on that, and we showed the picture of his store on here,
Mm-hmm.
and actually the building that I knew was his, he also owned the building right next to it, which was also his hardware store, and he sold carriages in that store also. So he had the two buildings right next to each other, and one of them was just the hardware store and farm implements and that sort of thing.
But that makes sense because everybody came to him to put their money in his safe.
And
So he had the money in town.
he did, and
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and I looked up a little more information. I think I may have mentioned last time that when he first came to Manor in 1876, he came and started as a blacksmith in
Okay.
Manor, and I found out that he came. He was, I think he was 19 years old, I believe, at the time, and he came as a single man
Mm-hmm.
and was living with another man who was also a single man, and the two of them were working as blacksmiths together. They were living together and working as blacksmiths. But that was the same year that William Luedecke got married. It was 1880. He got married, so he moved to his own place. But he did apparently, and I think I've figured out since then where his blacksmith shop was located, because he owned some property that according to the Sanford fire insurance maps that were done at the time, they show that there is a blacksmith shop on some of the property that he owned. So I think
Okay.
that was probably his place.
Mm.
Anyway, he wrote out his will and still owned those three lots that the Carthens had sold him. When he died, he still owned all three of those lots. He also owned four complete blocks next to each other,
Mm-hmm.
all except two lots that were right behind the property that the Carthens sold him. So four complete blocks in the city of Manor. He owned all of it, and that was at the time that he died. Now, two of them were just open fields. There were no houses, nothing on them, no division of any kind, no buildings of any kind at that time. But the other two would have had a little bit of something on them, and we'll see what they had in a minute.
Okay.
But anyway, he owned those four blocks altogether. Now, in 1945, Emma Luedecke, his wife, this is after she was the executrix of his will, his estate. And when in 1945, she sold the two lots
Mm-hmm.
where the 18 by 36 house was, and she sold them for $1,750.
Okay.
So there was more than just two pieces of land that she was selling. There had to be a house on them if she sold them for $1,750 at
Right.
that time. So after finding all of that, I decided I better find out who Alan and Eliza and Lucinda Carthen were, because there's a story there somewhere.
Okay.
So I started looking, see what I could find on the three of them. And what I found out took me and the person who I was looking all this information up for, took us off in a completely different direction that we never expected to go.
Okay.
So, what? So as I said, other than me and you and her, I mean, you're probably the only other person that's going to be hearing this story. The two of you, but nobody else in Manor would have any idea what any of this. If I, from what I'm going from now on, they wouldn't have any idea what I was talking about if I asked them about this. So
Okay.
you get the exclusive on this tonight. Do you have? I think I mentioned last time when we were looking. I think I mentioned something called the slave narratives,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether you've ever had any uh, idea what the slave narratives are.
It was stories. Somebody they people went out to interview former slaves, and they got their stories and everything, put it all together in a book, right?
Yeah, there were a bunch of different books because they
Mm-hmm.
covered a whole bunch of the southern states.
Okay.
This was in between 1936 and 1938. There, I don't know, are you familiar with the WPA, the Workers' Projects Administration?
I don't. I'm not familiar with that.
Right after the Great Depression, when people were still having a really hard time finding work and finding jobs, President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, started this uh, organization called the Workers' Project Association,
Okay.
and the whole point of it was just to put men to work. They couldn't find jobs. They couldn't get paid. They were having problems in that area. So he started all this to put them to work, and a lot of it, well, they were constructing buildings. Uh, they did a lot of work in the public parks across the U.S., building lodges and cabins and all kinds of stuff. And he put them to work doing that, and it really was very successful. But also, another part of the WPA, the Workers Project Association, another part was a bunch of writers got together and went all over the southern states and interviewed over 2,300 former slaves and put all of their stories in writing and published them in books. There's a number of different volumes. And it just so happens that Alan Carthen's
Mm-hmm.
story is one of them, one of the guys that they interviewed. Alan Carthen's story is in the slave narratives.
Okay.
And so, this is of course, the book for Texas. I know of two other slaves that were from the Manor area that are also in the Texas slave narratives. But Alan Carthen was interviewed, and he told his story in the slave narratives when they interviewed him. I think he was interviewed in 1937 because he says he was 74 years old at the time. And in his biography, he says he was born September 9th, 1863. He says his parents were Gabriel and Lucinda Carthen. So Lucinda was Alan's mother.
Okay.
When she bought the lot, the lot next to the two that he and Eliza owned, Lucinda was Alan's mother. So they had come to Texas in the early 1850s, along with Eggleston Dick Towns. There's two streets in Manor. One is Eggleston Street and another
Mm-hmm.
is Town Street.
Okay.
So this guy was very influential in Manor's early days. But they were Gabriel and Lucinda were slaves that came to Texas with Dick Towns, Eggleston Dick Towns, when he came. And in fact, I read one place that said he brought as many as 90 slaves with him when he moved. He moved from Alabama to here. And one place said he brought as many as 90 slaves when he came. So
Mm-hmm.
he bought some land um, that is just a little east of Manor here. Actually, it's about 2 miles, so it's not that far. From 2 miles from the old city of Manor, not from. It would be out. I don't know whether you're familiar with it at all, but if you go out Black Manor Road or go out Old Highway 20, you
Mm-hmm.
get about 2 miles out there, and his land was between the two of those roads. So
Okay.
he had quite a number of acres out there. I forget right off exactly what it was, but he bought a lot of acreage out there, and he set up his farm. And um, Gabriel and Lucinda Carthen were slaves on his plantation there. And Allen, in his biography, said that there were 10 children in his family, but he said six of them died when they were babies.
Wow.
So it was rough, I'm sure. He said six of them died when they were babies. And Allen said that at the time that he was interviewed in 1937, he said, as far as he knows, only him and his brother Jack are still living. And I think he was right because everything else I've found supports that. So when Allen was 19 years old, he married Eliza Ivory. I'm fairly sure it's Ivory, Ivory. There are some places, even on their marriage record, it shows Ivy, Ivey,
Okay.
but I think the name was actually Ivory. That's where you see it most commonly. But Eliza was 13 years old when she married Alan, who was 19 years old. And when I saw that, I said, I wonder if he's got the ages right. So I went and looked it up, and according to what Alan said, they were married in 1882.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and looked up 1880 marriage laws for the state of Texas. In 1880, it was legal for them to get married. The male had to be 12 years old, the female had to be 10 years old. If
Wow.
they were at least those ages, they could get married.
Wow.
So it's changed since then.
Yeah, a lot.
But anyway, that was the law at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So Alan says when he was 19, he married her and she was 13.
Okay.
She worked on the William Hill plantation, which is about 3 miles on the other side of Manor. If you go out Toll Road 130, just a little ways, where Greg Manor Road crosses it
Mm-hmm.
out there, The Hill plantation was just on the other side of 130. In fact, the Hill family cemetery is still there. It's back in a bunch of trees on some private property there, but the Hill family cemetery is still there where the Hill family plantation was.
Okay.
And so that means that Allen over on the Dick Towns plantation was about 5 miles away from Eliza over on the William Hill plantation. And I got wondering how they got together. You know,
Yeah.
that seems a little unusual, but he says they met at church.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know which church that might have been, but he says they met at church. So they got married, and the marriage record says 1880, but he says 1882. I kind of think it was actually 1880 from some other things that I've seen. And anyway, Alan and Eliza say, or Alan says that he and Eliza had one child, one baby that died. It
Mhm.
didn't live either. So at some point, they adopted a 7-year-old girl named Katie. And I don't know exactly where they got Katie. My guess would be from one of the other families on the farm on the plantation, but they don't really. He doesn't tell that. He just says they adopted 7-year-old Katie. And when Katie was 15 years old, she had a child named Samuel, and she immediately gave the baby to Alan and Eliza, who raised Samuel until he was an adult and old enough to get out on his own. So after emancipation in 1865, Allen says that his family, Gabriel and Lucinda and the Carthen family, stayed on the Dick Towns plantation for about 3 years, and then they moved out and bought some land of their own. Yeah, I think he said on the Dave Epwright plantation. They said so. They probably worked as sharecroppers after emancipation. They worked as sharecroppers for Dick Towns for a while, and then they moved out on their own and bought their own farm. So now I'm going to go back now, and I'm not going to list them again, but this is where we're going to insert all those deed records, and we get up to the time when Alan and Eliza and Lucinda bought those 3 lots that were next to each other. They've got those 3 properties. They've built that 18 by 36 house on one of those lots, and sometime in the early 1890s,
Mhm.
Alan Carthen saw an ad in an Austin newspaper, and he went to an address that was listed in the ad, which was 1704 West Avenue in Austin. And he said he knocked on the door and asked them about the job that he saw listed in the newspaper. And he said that was on a Friday afternoon. He said Monday morning he went to work as the carriage driver for a man named Edward Mandel House. And what I learned later on was that Edward Mandel House had purchased that property where Allen went, 1704 West Avenue. He had purchased that property in 1886, and in 1890 he built a house on that property. And one of those that first house that I showed you, the picture that you have the picture of there,
Okay.
is
Yeah.
is the big brick 2-story house.
Next picture. Circle. There you go.
That one. Go back to the first.
One more.
One more.
One more.
One more. That
That's it.
one. That was the house that Edward Mandel built
Wow.
on his property at 1704 West Avenue in Austin.
Wow. That probably cost him about $600-700.
I don't know, but it cost him. It's brick. It's
Yeah.
red brick. I've seen color pictures of it also, but that's the house he built there. And Alan got the job
Hmm.
as carriage driver or coachman for Edward Mandel House, and he and Eliza and Sam moved into the servants' quarters at that property, and that's why they ended up selling their property to William Ludecky here in Manor. They didn't
Oh.
need it anymore
Okay.
because he got the job working there. Now, what you need to know a little bit about Edward Mandel House. Um, he had purchased the property, I said, in 1886. He built the house in 1890, and then they put the ad in the paper looking for a carriage driver. He I had never heard of him until I started researching this story, but he was a highly influential backroom politician in Austin and in Texas and in several other places. Just to give you an idea, he managed the election campaign and it was an advisor for President Woodrow Wilson.
Wow.
He also was advisor to and managed campaigns for 4 different Texas governors.
Oh, this is Mr. House.
This, yeah,
Okay.
this is he for 4 different governors. In fact, Governor James Hogg hired uh, Mr. House, Edward House, to to be a part of his military staff in 1893, and he gave him the honorary title of lieutenant colonel. So for almost all the rest of his life, he went by Colonel House instead of just Edward House. There are some things that say he really didn't care for that title all that much, but it served him well, so he used it. So, but but anyway, he had no official military duties, but he went by Colonel Edward House for almost about the rest of his life. So Allen was working for Colonel House in that, living in the servants' quarters in that house that we just showed there, and they became such good friends that they had a relationship for the rest of Colonel House's life.
Wow.
Colonel House left Austin in 1902 and went to New York and began to do a lot of his work nationally and in New York. And he ended up um, doing a lot of work overseas, and we'll mention a little bit a little bit later. But he was influential in so many ways, in so many places, with elections of well-known figures. And when he moved to New York in 1902, Allen, even though they had this very close relationship, Allen said, "I'm sorry, I can't go." He said, "My mother is in such in critical condition, I can't leave her." So Allen and Colonel House parted ways at that time, and Allen stayed in Austin to take care of Lucinda, his mother.
Okay.
But they kept in touch for all the time. Um, Colonel House died in 1938, and he was not in Texas at the time. But from what I read, for the rest of his life, he considered Austin his home. He considered the property he held in Austin as his home. But in 1938, he died. The funeral was held in Houston. He's buried in Houston. The funeral was held in Houston, and Alan Carthen rode the train from Austin to Houston to attend Colonel House's funeral. That's how strong their relationship still was at that point. Um, During his lifetime, Colonel House, no matter where he was, what he was doing, he often wrote letters to Allen, sending him money, especially at Christmas time. He would send him a gift of some money. There was an article in the Dallas Express newspaper in 1938, right after the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to read you this because it tells you a lot. It says, this is from the Dallas paper, one of the chief mourners at the funeral in Houston of the late Colonel E.M. House was his Negro coachman, Alan Carthen. And then they say, Uncle Alan, as he is more familiarly known in Austin, might be said to be something of a national figure. In fact, his picture appeared in Liberty. Liberty was, I never heard of Liberty, so I had to look it up. It was a magazine that was published at that time.
Okay.
He said his picture appeared in Liberty with pictures of Colonel House and other notables who had met with King George V of England at the famous conference called the Freedom of the Seas.
Wow.
The picture showed Uncle Allen in the uniform that Governor Hogg had presented to Colonel House. And it says when Colonel House, when he appointed him to his staff, Colonel House then presented the uniform to Alan Carthen with the request that Allen have his picture made in that uniform. And Uncle Allen's picture stood on the colonel's desk for many years. Now you have that one picture of Alan Carthen there.
Yeah, back one.
That is his picture in that uniform.
Wow.
And that is probably the only existing picture of Alan Carthen anywhere. But that's him in the uniform that that Governor James Hogg had given to Colonel House. He gave it to Allen and said, "Here, have your picture taken in this." And he kept that picture. Colonel House kept that picture on his desk
Wow.
for a long, long time. Uh, Once I read that the article said that he had the article was written in 1938, and
Mm-hmm.
it said that Allen he had it said that Allen's picture was in the Liberty magazine. I immediately started looking online to see can I find any copies of Liberty magazine posted anywhere, and fortunately I was able to find many of the 1932 uh, series of Liberty magazine online, and I only had to look through 15 different issues before I found the picture.
Wow. Did it have an article to go with the picture?
It had, but the article was about Colonel House.
Oh, okay.
The article was all about Colonel House and what he was doing or what he had done in his lifetime. But the article mentioned, I mean, it mentioned Alan Carthen in the uniform, and so they included that picture in the article.
Okay.
So we found the picture, and it's probably the only one that exists. There probably is no other picture of Alan Carthen. So, as I said, the little article in the newspaper said Uncle Alan did not accompany his employer east because he could not leave his aged mother. However, they kept up a correspondence over the years. It was told that in the middle of the peace conference, following the World War, and this had to be World War One, but in the middle of a peace conference that Colonel House was at, he said Colonel House jumped up from the table and ran out of the meeting with the explanation that he had to write Uncle Alan and send him some money. That's how close they were, even after all that time.
Right.
And it said that the picture that Alan gave the colonel, uh, or that there a picture that Colonel House gave to Alan,
Mm-hmm.
hung on Alan's wall in his house for many years. Also, so they each had pictures of the other one in their house for many, many years. That's how close they were. Well, we know that most slaves of that day and time couldn't read or write.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Alan, in his biography, says he went to school for 3 months. So, and Eliza, in the 1940 U.S. Census, says that Eliza says that she completed third grade. Door, so they were educated.
Well,
But
you said he found an article in the Austin newspaper for that job, so he had to been able to read a little bit.
okay, I found the 1910, 1920, 1930, or 1900, 1910, 1920, and 1930 U.S. censuses all said Alan and Eliza could read and write.
Wow. So you can
So
read
they
right for a
could.
long time.
Yeah. In fact, I also found what they called a delayed birth certificate. They would issue delayed birth certificates years after somebody was born when they never had a birth certificate to start with.
Right.
I found a delayed birth certificate online for Eliza Carthen, and it actually has her signature on it.
Wow.
You know it's her signature because it's in different writing from everything else that's on the document, and it's in pencil, and it's very rough writing, but it clearly says Eliza Carthen.
Okay.
So yes, they could read and write. So that's why Colonel House kept sending Allen letters all through the rest of his life and sending him money. So uh, they were very close in their relationship, and it was something different and something special for a former slave to rise to that kind of position and hold that kind of job with such a prominent person.
Mm-hmm.
It was not at all a common practice in that day and time. So we know that Alan and Eliza and Sam, who was Katie's son, lived at a number of different places in Austin over the next few years. And in his biography, Alan says at one time he was receiving a pension from the state of Texas. He was getting $12 a month.
Wow.
So
Well, I got to look it up.
he was getting $12 a month. And he
Man.
said that didn't quite cover expenses. He said
What year was that?
that was probably around 1937.
Okay. And that would be $258.
Well, that would have
Well,
helped.
I'm sorry, that was too much. Approximately $270 in today's
Okay,
money.
yeah, but he was using that to pay for the house and other things that where they lived. So he was getting $12 a month state pension, and I don't know what else, other money he was getting. Of course, Colonel House was sending him money every now and then, but I don't know what else he had as far as income at that time.
And probably still working. So I mean, that's a pretty decent amount of money a month if you're working plus getting that a pension. How did it say why he was getting a pension from the state?
No, I didn't. I
Wow,
couldn't
that's
find anything that
interesting.
gave any reason why he was getting a state pension. He just said he was. I don't know. Uh, anyway, Allen died March 25th, 1939. He was 75 years old. So this was 1 year after he was interviewed for the slave narrative. So he most likely was in pretty bad condition at the time that he was interviewed. But he died and he was buried in what is known as Plumbers Cemetery in Austin. It's Plumbers, Plummers.
Okay.
Plumbers. At that time, it generally went by Mount Calvary Cemetery, but there's another cemetery in Austin that is Mount Calvary now, and this one is called Plumbers Cemetery, named after a guy that I think owned part of the property. But it is an all African American cemetery in Austin. It is located right where Springdale Road and Weberville Road join. They come together. You know, yeah, so you know where it is then. Yeah, hmm that's where it is, and that's where Alan Carthen was buried. Not so for Eliza. After Alan died,
Hmm.
at some point, and I don't know exactly when, but after sometime after Alan died, Eliza and Sam moved to California
Whoa.
because that's where Sam's mother, Katie, was living. She had married a guy named Cornelius Wicks, Wicks, and they were living in California. And so Eliza and Sam moved to California, and Eliza is buried in Los Angeles, uh, some in a cemetery there. Sometime between 1940 and 1950 is when I think she moved there, but there's nothing that says exactly. But she died in 1959, and she's buried in Los Angeles. So that's the difference between her and Alan. They're that far apart.
Wow.
Okay, so with all of that in mind, now I said all of this. I looked up and found all of this because I was trying to help this person find the previous owners of the property.
Right.
And when we found it, it branched off into this whole new story about Alan and Eliza and Colonel House and all of those people. So we know from what I said that Alan and Eliza got the mechanics lien
Mm-hmm.
from William Ludecky in 1899, and then they turned around and sold the property to William Ludecky in 1901. William Ludecky, as I said, bought and sold many, many pieces of property in
Right.
Manor from 1880s to the early 1900s. And by that time, he owned all of 4 lots right together. In fact, the 4 lots he owned would make a square. I mean, there's 2 here and 2 here. They would make a square. So he owned 4 lots, complete lots, except for the 2 lots that were right behind Alan and Eliza's house that they built. But an article in the Austin Daily Statesman newspaper in June 22nd, 1898, it said, Mr. William Ludecky has commenced work on a new residence. It is a spacious 2-story building of modern convenience. All right, now we've got we've got pictures of 2 houses there. One
Right.
of them is a smaller 1-story house. That's just get the other one
Yeah.
there, right there. That's the house. That's the house we think Alan built part of it.
Okay.
and that's the Ludecky family standing in front of it. That picture I got from I don't know if you're familiar with what they call real picture postcards. Back then, in people in that day and time and in towns, they used to take pictures and put them on one side of the postcard, and then of course, you wrote on the other side and put the address and mailed them on the other side. That picture is from a postcard that I got or that I found on a online auction site, and it said that this picture came from the collection of someone named Bertie Ludecky.
Okay.
Now, Bertie Ludecky was one of William Ludecky's daughters. Um, her name actually was, let me see, which one have I got here? Her actual name was Katharina Philippine Ludecky, but she went by Bertie Ludecky.
A lot easier to say.
For, if you go through all kinds of records, and she's only listed as Bertie Ludecky, but her real name was Katharina Philippine. And so that picture of that house, we think the 18 by 36. Actually, if you measure, there are two different rooms in that house. That if you measure them together, they come out to 18 by 36.
Okay.
But we think when they sold that property to William Ludecky in 1901, he probably added on to it and built the other part that comes out from
Yeah,
the
the
side.
one that comes, yeah, on the right hand side.
So, and there are a couple of different photographs of that house, but we're fairly sure that that particular house at that location was the house that Alan Carthen built and that William Ludecky bought from him in 1901. Now, there is an interview that one other of William Ludecky's daughters did later on in life. I don't know the exact year of it. Her name was Pansy Ludecky. At least that's the name she went by, was Pansy Ludecky. Her real name was Magdalena Carolina.
You have a Filipina and a Carolina. Gotcha.
So her real name was Magdalena Carolina, but she went by the name of Pansy for the rest of her life. She was a music teacher in Manor and Austin and that sort of thing. But anyway, in this interview that she did, and I'm not sure who it was done with because I've only seen parts of it, but she said that her brother lived in that smaller house across the street from the new, spacious two-story house that the Ludecky family built in 1898. And now you've got that picture of that two-story house. That one is the Ludecky house that they built.
Okay.
And we're fairly sure that it was straight across the street from the little one-story house that Alan and Eliza built. That's the Ludecky house. There are a couple of different pictures. That picture came from the old Manor Volunteer Library website. The the library closed in 2020 because of COVID
Okay.
and has not reopened. But that picture came from the website. Unfortunately, the website was available for a long time until fairly recently, but I've looked for it several times in the past couple of weeks. It's not there anymore.
Mm.
But if you know where to look, you can still find parts of it. But you have to know where to look. But if you just look for the Manor Library, it's not going to come up. So I don't know what happened. Somebody took it down very recently,
Okay.
within the past 3 months. But that picture came from the files of the old Manor Library, and they said that that's the house, the Ludecky house. So we believe that house was built straight across the street from the smaller house that was also the Ludecky house.
Either of those houses still standing?
Well, the first one is because that's the one that this woman is buying.
The one-story one.
Yeah, the one story is the one that she has now bought and is living in.
Okay.
She has that one.
Okay.
She is now living in that house.
Wow. Okay.
uh,
Wow. That's
I went and met with her just a few days after she actually closed the deal on the house,
Hmm.
and she took me all through that house and looked at it, and it is extremely interesting to look at on the inside.
Well, okay.
From the day and time in which it was built and the things that have been done to it, you can tell that parts of it were original and parts of it were added on to, and several things that were changed around. But it is a very interesting house, and she's slowly going to be modernizing parts in it so she can live comfortably in it.
Huh. Okay. Does it have a lot of fancy woodwork, or is it just a basic house?
Just on the inside, just
Yeah.
a basic house.
Okay.
It's board walls. No
Oh yeah.
sheetrock, no
Oh
no wallpaper, nothing.
no,
It's
nothing.
just
It's
just
just
the
board.
boards.
Oh, that's
And
wow.
some of the boards are maybe 6 inches wide. Some
Hmm.
of them are maybe 12 inches wide.
Uh-huh.
So you can tell it was built in different sections at different times.
Is it a historical landmark?
Not yet.
Okay. It sounds like you're getting there.
Not
Okay.
yet. So anyway, that's the house she bought. That's the house she's living in now.
Okay.
Um, so um, in her interview, Pansy Ludecky said that after William Ludecky died and all the other Ludecky family members had moved away from Manor, she says they tore down the two-story house.
Huh.
So it's not there. The two-story house is gone because she
Hmm.
says they tore it down. And she says after they tore it down, the plan was, and I have not been able to confirm that it ever happened, but she says the plan was that all the property that the Ludecky family still owned in those 4 blocks
Hmm.
was going to be donated to the Clayton Vocational Institute in Manor. Clayton Vocational Institute was the colored school.
Yeah, I remember we
Yeah,
talked about that.
yeah. If you go over to if you go down Cary Manor Street to where it dead ends, there is a building there that used to be the Manor Library because that building was the last remaining building of the Clayton Vocational
Right.
Institute.
I
And the
remember that.
historical marker for the Clayton Vocational Institute stands in front of the building that used to be the Manor Library.
And I also remember the man that started that had bought that property, but then the guys at the Capitol had bought it from him as soon as he got it.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
remembering right. Yeah, yeah. There were several different. The the um, the uh, the school started originally over on blocks away from there in a different
Hmm.
place, and the historical marker was originally put up in. And I just found this out today. I mean, I knew where the marker was, but I had requested the uh, the application for the historical marker. I had requested it from the Texas Historical Commission, and I just got it this morning
Okay.
because I wanted to look through it and try to find out why the historical marker for the Clayton Vocational Institute was put up at a house that was a long ways away from where the actual school was. Well, the original Manor, I think it was usually called the Manor Negro School, is what it was called at the time. It was close to where this marker was originally put up, but not in the same place.
Okay.
They had the original Manor Negro School was in Block 1 of the city of Manor, and this house where the marker was uh, 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 put up when they this was I think it was 1883 or 1884 when they first got the historical marker for the Clayton Vocational Institute. It was put up at a house that was in Block 15.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of 14 off.
There were reasons for it, but
Hmm.
and I'll be putting all that information together later. But I just got that this morning,
Okay.
so I'll be putting that story out later because the good news is in 2017 apparently somebody discovered that was the wrong location for the marker, so they moved it over to where it is today
Okay.
in front of the old library building. So it is in the right place now.
Okay.
Anyway, um, so we know that all the Ludecky family members had left Manor by at least 1824. We think it was the date they were gone, and the Austin City Directory shows them at that time living at 1807 Congress Avenue, which was way out way out in the north part of Austin at that
Hmm.
time. But it shows that William and Emma Ludecky living at 1807 Congress Avenue. So we're fairly sure that somewhere around that time, the two-story house would have been torn down. So, two things. I found an article, and I found this when I was trying to find some information on the Clayton Vocational Institute historical marker, why it was put up at that other place. I found an issue of, I don't know whether you're familiar with it or not, but it's called the Villager newspaper. It's a newspaper that's been published, I think it's since 1973, and it's still being published today. It's a weekly newspaper, and it is for the black community. And it's been
No.
published for all those years. I think they said it's going on 52 years now that the guy has been publishing the Villager newspaper.
Here locally.
Yes, yeah,
Oh.
in Austin. Yeah, he
Oh, you heard of it? Okay.
publishes it in Austin, but he covers Manor and Elgin and Pflugerville and any news from places like that. So I was looking for some information on the Clayton Vocational Institute marker and trying to find out why it was put in that location where it was. And what I came across was an 1986 edition of the Villager newspaper. And in that edition of 1986, it was talking about a celebration that was going to be happening in Manor.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that part of the celebration was going to be a historic tour of buildings and places in Manor. And one of the places that was on the historic tour, the way it's listed in that article, it said it was the Luedecke Hennig home.
Oh.
So if the two-story house was torn down
Mm-hmm.
when they left Manor, the only Luedecke Hennig home that could still be standing is the one that she's living in now.
Right.
There was another thing that confirms it also. There are documents from a May 1st, 1991 meeting of the Travis County Historical Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the documents included in that collection is a page that lists 11 possible locations for historical markers in Manor.
Okay.
And number 7 on that list of 11 possible locations for historical markers, it gives the Luedecke house, built in 1899.
Okay.
And it gives the address, the current address today of the house that this woman is living in.
Wow.
And it says that at the time, Frankie Hennig was living in the house. Because it says that when they talked to her about it, she says she couldn't afford to pay for the historical marker.
Oh.
So
Okay.
the 1886 article from the Villager calls it the Luedecke Hennig home. And the 1991 list of possible locations says it was the Luedecke house, but Frankie Hennig is living in it now. It's got to be the same house.
Yes.
Now, what I have since confirmed, I'm 99.9% sure. If you remember, I said earlier that when we first found the 1954 and 57 Travis County directories, they showed Oscar and Frankie Hennig living in Manor, but it was at a different address than the one of where this house is.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have pretty much proved now that the address they showed in those directories is the same address where this house is now located, because the street that this house is on and the street that was listed in the directories intersect right where this house is located.
So they put it on the wrong street,
So,
but it's
so
in the right
well,
location.
yeah, and that could have been that, but it could be also that over the years addresses would change
Mm-hmm.
as new people moved in. The addresses would change. So then the address at one point changed from this street to that street, because it's right on the corner.
Okay.
The house is right on the corner.
Well, I mean, so usually whichever street the front door is facing is the street that is on. But since they added onto that house, maybe the front door was on one street and then it ended up moving on the other side of the house.
I think that's exactly it.
Okay.
I think the 18 by 36 portion of the house that Alan and Eliza built faced one street, but when the Luedeckes added the other section on it, faced the other street.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I think that's exactly what happened. You're right on that.
Because the original house probably was just a sharpshooter house.
Oh yeah.
Because that's, yeah. I'm from Texas. That is a prominent house, especially with black people living in it. And if they added onto it, it looked like it just made a L, because you could tell, kind of see that original house. Can you put the picture up again? Yeah, the part to the left looks like that old
Yeah,
sharpshooter house. And if it was a sharpshooter house, the front door wouldn't be on the side of the house; it would be on the end.
yeah.
And then the other end would be the back door. That's why it's a sharpshooter, because you can shoot straight through the house.
Yeah.
And they probably added on that section on the right hand side.
Yeah, you find a lot of those in places like New Orleans
Yes.
and a lot of the places they're called shotgun houses.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's why, because you open front door, you can shoot
Shoot
shotgun
straight
all the way
through.
through. You
So
go
yeah,
out
that
the
makes
back door.
sense.
Yeah.
Because either you see that, or you'll see they take two sharpshooters and put them and they sandwich them together.
Yeah. What we think is the part of that house over on the right side
Uh-huh.
was the 18 by 36 that Alan and Eliza built.
I
And then the
agree.
Ludekis added the other part, because the part here would have been the first part, 18 by 36, would have been facing this street.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Ludekis added onto it, it now faces this street.
Right, because it makes sense to put the door on the side of the house right there, and then
Yep.
built the porch and everything, and covered it up. Because that doesn't match that new part. Even the architecture doesn't match the other side of the
Yeah,
house.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the front door of the house now is directly behind where those people are standing.
Yep, that makes absolute sense.
So-
Because there's a gate right there.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So-
look like a little sidewalk.
Yep, you're
All
right.
right.
So I think that's what it was. Why they were showed two different addresses, because at one time it faced one street, and then after a while it faced the other street.
I think that's interesting how easily history can get lost by something just so simple. You know, oh well, they added onto the house and just switch what street it was on. That's really interesting.
Yep. But,
Okay.
but it's still standing. So if the house was on the historic tour in 1986 and it was listed for a possible historic marker in 1991, then it can't be the house that the Ludekis tore down when they moved out of Manor.
Exactly.
So this has got to be the Ludeki house that they first built when Alan and Eliza got the mechanics lien.
Right.
So
Right. Wow.
the Texas Historical Commission has a program now. They haven't had it for too many years, but they have a program now where you can. It's a program where you can get what are called undertold stories, historical markers.
Okay.
Undertold story markers, and it's not the regular historical marker like at the Clayton Vocational Institute or for City of Manor, but it's another thing that you can get. And every year from October the 1st through November 15th is the time when applications can be submitted for undertold story markers. And they will be considered to see whether or not they are approved, and they can get an undertold story marker for that house.
So what does that mean? What does that mean? Undertold story marker.
It means a story of some place or some location, some maybe even a person in the history of a certain place that was significant and important to that area, but it's not anything that anybody knows about now.
Huh. And is that like, I know this is going to sound terrible. Does that marker cost less than to have a full historical marker?
I would imagine so, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
Anyway,
So why can't the house get a full marker?
it may later on. We don't know that yet.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
We're not
Gotcha.
sure yet.
Just trying to work your way up to it. Okay.
Yeah. So as I said, the cutoff, the deadline was November 15th.
Right.
The person who bought the house, the person who's living in the house, filed an application for an undertold story marker on November 15th.
All right.
And I can read you here what she put in the marker, or what we put in the application for the marker. And of course, I'm going to leave out the address. I'm going to leave out the location of the house. But she said that acquisition began with African American residents Eliza Carthen in 1896, followed by her husband, Alan Carthen, in 1899. Their achievement of land ownership was notable, as many African Americans faced systemic difficulty in acquiring property under post slavery land laws and practices. In 1899, the couple secured a mechanic's lien from prominent Manor merchant William Ludecky to build a one story, 18 by 36 wooden box house. Allen Carthen was born into slavery and was famously the coachman for Colonel E. M. House, the powerful confidant of President Woodrow Wilson. Carthen cherished his association with House, maintaining a friendship and correspondence with him throughout his life. In 1901, the property was sold to William Ludecky for $405 and cancellation of the lien. The structure was later enlarged to an architecturally significant front gable and wing central hall folk Victorian style house. Located across the street from the two-story Ludecky family home, a Ludecky son occupied this residence. The home remained a part of the Ludecky family holdings until William Ludecky's death in 1932. And that's what the application that she submitted says.
Okay.
Now, we won't know anything until sometime in February. They don't make their decisions until sometime in February, and we'll find out whether they accepted this application and whether the house can be one of the undertold story markers. But even at that point, it doesn't prohibit it from getting a regular historical marker later on.
So what does this mean for the owner,
Uh,
the current owner?
that's a good question.
Is that
We don't
is
know
that,
exactly yet.
is that putting a burden on the owner? Is this going to help the owner help maintain the property and everything to try to keep it up? I feel like once you have a historical home, is the expectation is you better keep it up or
Yes.
else.
Yeah, that is part of it. There are rules and regulations and restrictions as far as buildings with historical markers, but I don't know exactly what all it's going to mean yet
Okay.
because because has had to do some things to the house in order to make it livable.
Oh,
She could not get insurance on the house without putting a new roof on it,
okay.
and she there wasn't the only thing the only insulation in the house was newspaper insulation in some of the walls. So she's had all that taken out and new insulation blown into the walls.
That's in 2025. That didn't need to be done earlier, or was somebody in the house before she got into it?
Oh yeah, she bought it from someone else that was there. Other people had lived there, but
Whoa! Wow! Wow! I hate to hear how much she paid for this house, especially in this day and age. I mean, that house went what the property was getting passed on for $25, and now she done got this house. Well, you know she paid the price.
well, yeah, I assume she did. I figured that wasn't none of my business,
I
so
feel
that's
you.
not in the story.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe we'll talk to her one day and she'll tell me on the side, but I can
yeah,
imagine.
because that is the story of the house
Hmm.
is a story that needs to be told,
Yes.
and the story of Alan and Liza Carthen is a separate story that needs to be told.
Yeah, that's a really good and interesting story.
Yeah, so we're not sure exactly yet how that's going to work out, but that's why I said it's still going in the future, because at some point we're going to make sure that both of those stories get told where people will know about them and will remember them. Uh, she sent me an email at one point right before she was going to be submitting this application,
Hmm.
and she said she had contacted the people who handle the historic markers from the Texas Historical Commission and had asked them what they thought about whether or not she should request a marker for the house as the home built by Alan and Eliza Carthen, or whether she should submit an application for a marker for the house as the house that was owned by the Ludecky family.
Oh, okay.
And they agreed with her. They told her, and I had already responded to her email and told her what I thought, and she said they agreed with me that the house really should have a regular historical marker because it was the William Ludecky house.
Okay.
But that's why she submitted this application as an undertold story marker.
Gotcha.
So it's
That
still
way both stories can still be told and you can have a marker for both of them. That's good. All right.
So at some point, both of the stories are going to be told. But since she's just moved into the house about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and still a lot of things are going on, and we're still working on all this stuff, that it hasn't been decided for sure exactly what's going to be happening yet. But
Interesting.
it continues into the future.
Okay. All right. That's a really good story.
Yeah, there's another part. I don't have it with me, but there's another part uh, that is a little interesting part of the story. But and maybe sometime it's a lot shorter than this, but maybe sometime we can include that in one of the next meetings. But it's a story. When I mentioned that Alan Carthen said, as far as he knew, his brother Jack was the only member of the family still living.
Right.
We know that there is, well, there's two more stories actually that could add on to this. One is the story of his brother Jack. Jack Carthen was born on the Dick Towns plantation, of course, just the same way Alan was. But at some point, when the rest of the family moved away from the Dick Towns plantation,
Hmm.
Jack Carthen decided that life was too dull in Travis County. He moved to San Angelo, and he worked for 18 years as a porter in a saloon in San Angelo.
Wow.
And so there's a little bit of another story for Jack Carthen there that is part of this, really part of the story that needs to be included with Alan Carthen and Jack Carthen. But there's another part of the story where Alan Carthen, in I believe it was 1906, became or was appointed as the guardian for three children whose last name was Norris, Norris. He was appointed guardian of those three children because they were underage.
Hmm.
And it turns out, from what I've been able to find, that those three children were children of Alan and Jack's sister, whose name was Pleasant Carthen. And she had married a guy named Walter Norris, and they had four children. But at the time that Alan was appointed as guardian, one of them was old enough that she didn't need a guardian. But the three of them were Alan's nieces and nephews,
Hmm.
and they needed guardians, and so was appointed as guardian for those three children. The interesting part of that story is that the reason they had need of someone to be their guardian, apparently their mother, Pleasant Carthen, had already died, because there are probate records for the family where Alan was appointed. And it says that, or Pleasant Carthen is not mentioned anywhere in the probate records. When Walter Norris, the father, died, he left all of his property to the children. The mother's name is not mentioned anywhere. But but we know that Pleasant Carthen was his wife, but she was out of the picture at that point. The interesting thing of the story is that Walter Norris had been in what was called at that time the lunatic asylum in Austin for a little while.
Oh.
He was released from the lunatic asylum and went to work temporarily on a farm in Williamson County. And he drowned in a pond, or a tank, as they called him, drowned in a tank there in Williamson County. And so unexpectedly he died. The story says that he was working there in the farm, and that he stopped and went to the tank to get a drink of water and fell in, because I suspect maybe it had something to do with the fact that he had been in the lunatic asylum and had some problems. But it says that he died, and they found his body in the water. So the mother was already gone, and now the father was gone. Somebody needed to take care of the children.
Right.
And at first, Walter Norris's two sons took over as guardian. One of them took over as guardian of the children, but then he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So Alan Carthen took over as guardian of the
Wow.
three children.
So lost his child, adopted a child, and ended up being a guardian to
To
three
three,
more.
three more.
Right. Okay. Wow. I thank you for telling these people's story and not letting them get lost into history. I think what you do is great work. Uh, you have me thinking. Um, I don't know a lot about my father's side, and I'm like, I haven't been able to find anything. I'm like, man, I bet you can find like, my whole family tree. You come back here next month, and it's like, check out all this stuff I found. Like, wow, how did you find it? So that you're doing really good work. Really good work.
Well, like I said, I think these are stories that need to be told somewhere, and we're not sure exactly where it's going to go yet, but we're, we're we're not finished with it by a long shot.
Oh, no telling what else you'll dig up. Man, you might find neighbors and everything else. No telling who you'll find.
Yeah.
But that's why. Oh, I do want to ask you, Mr. House's house, is his house still there?
No, it has been torn down.
Okay.
I think they said it was, I believe, 1997. They said the house was
Oh,
torn down.
wow.
There is another building there right now, but there in front of this building that's there now, there is a historical marker for Mr. House.
Okay.
Oh, the other thing is, I don't know whether you have any idea uh, on North Lamar or on Lamar Boulevard in Austin, there is a place. It's right where 15th Street crosses Lamar Boulevard, and there is a athletic complex there called House Park.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? It's an athletic complex, a football field
Mhm.
that was originally part of Colonel House's horse pasture. He
Really?
donated that to the city of Austin.
Wow.
He donated it actually to the city of Austin and to the YMCA. And then at some point, a few years later, the YMCA, they said, ceased to exist. So he redid the deed, donating the land to the city of Austin and to Austin ISD. And so they made the athletic complex on Mr. House's land.
Wow.
And it's still there today. There are several different Austin high schools that use that stadium for their football games.
Wow.
And that was part of his property. Yeah,
Is it downtown?
It is
Okay.
right where right where Shoal Creek crosses Lamar, but it's also where 15th Street crosses Lamar. It's right there.
I guess I need to get out the house more because I'm glad she knows she's an Austinite. So
Yeah. So, but that was part of Colonel House's land, and he donated it.
Okay. Well, you got anything else for us?
I think that's about it for today.
This is a great show. I hope y'all enjoy this. Uh, this is our history now, and all us new transplants. Uh, I think it's interesting for us to get to know the town and how it came up and how it came about and everything else. So we'll keep doing this, and he'll keep digging up the past, and we'll keep presenting it in the present, and then we'll see where we go in the future.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you for joining us on Frontline Manor on the Rise. My name's Kevin Still, Mr. Durade. If you did not know, this is Wayne Schneider, the Manor historian. And until next time, peace.